my groupies even, like when I was like really just getting started, like would be like the nerdy, like, you know what I mean? That didn't want to just like fuck you.
Well,
they wanted to like talk about
today
shit.
we got a rapper on the program and he reads books.
Dude,
you'll see. I got
like,
that shit.
That shit is whack, man. I want to hear about lean.
We're sitting here with Pell, artist out of Louisiana, and you have a new EP coming out this Friday. Can you tell us what your inspiration was for this project?
Well, the name of the EP is Girasol, and it's Spanish for sunflower. And the main inspiration around the time that I was working on the project, it was originally going to be called Count to Zen, and I was trying to make a completion to this trilogy that I had been working on. My first project was called Floating While Dreaming, the second one was called Limbo, and the third one was going to be called Count to Zen, but I felt like the music that I was making didn't really represent something that was chill. Obviously my music is always a little bit more melodic and slower tempos, but I felt like the color that I kept thinking of was this marigold color, like the color that I was always wearing. Shout out to OBJ. Yeah, but yeah, like I feel like it was really the color that inspired the music, and I didn't put myself in a box by saying that everything had to sound like this color, and I'm not saying that even I look at synesthesia as like something that I want my music to be about, but I felt like it influenced the beginning writing process of this music. And then furthermore, the analogy that I would say is it's kind of like, you know, the way a sunflower looks up to the sun for energy and light and, you know, growth is the same way that like we feel when like we keep our heads high and we look up, you know, instead of down. And I wanted this to be like, even in our darkest days, we still should look up just like a sunflower does. And, you know, despite any type of adversity that you're going through, like it's all about like, you know what I mean? There's always a light at the end of the tunnel.
So does the album, you said the color marigold, is that like a theme throughout each song? Is the color kind of an inspiration throughout, or does the mood kind of shift throughout the whole project?
I think the mood definitely shifts throughout the whole project. Once again, I feel like it was more that marigold helped start the inspiration, but then it went everywhere, you know what I mean? We added a few, you know, maroons and, you know, emerald greens to it. It's like, it's different now. But I feel like where we first started was definitely the marigold. And I think that the story in terms of what you're hearing on the project is, you know, the first song is Seeds, you know what I mean? It's like the growth, you know, in the beginning. And then, you know, you have water in the middle of it. I feel like I separated it into 3 acts, you know what I mean? You have, and I guess to mimic photosynthesis or something. Yeah. But like, it's like, you know, you have dirt, water, and sunlight, you know what I mean? And those are the things that, and obviously oxygen, that are the reason that this plant can grow. And at the same time, I feel like certain aspects of my life were the defining moments that helped me to grow.
You are with Payday Records, a label that brought us Gangstar and actually released Jay-Z's first single before Reasonable Doubt even came out in my lifetime. They recently, you know, came back. They dropped that DJ Premier ASAP Ferg song. What does it mean to you to be a part of their rebranding, their relaunching?
First off, I love that song. Shout out to Primo and shout out to Ferg. That's amazing. Yeah. But it feels great to be a part of this history, and it also feels great to know that I have a vision for potentially its future. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's why the relationship is going to be so good, because they have this working knowledge that I don't, because I'm a part of a different generation. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's good to have that knowledge and also have somebody to look up to and have musical conversations that extend out of like my everyday conversation. But at the same time, I feel like being, you know, a part of today is important, and also it allows us to have a really great partnership. Yeah,
that's awesome. I just want to ask, what artists from like the 90s, early 2000s, like who did you listen to growing up? Like what was your big inspiration?
Tribe, definitely. I listened to Mace, one of the first albums. I got 4 albums from my brother. I quit football when I was younger, when I was in high school. I remember I was mad because they had started somebody over me. And my brother was like in college, and he had heard that I quit the football team. He was like, "Yo, Jerry, like, hey, if you gonna quit, if you really gonna do this music thing," because I was like, I want to produce, I want to start production. I didn't even really want to rap at first. So I was like, yeah, what do you care? And he was like, yeah, come to Best Buy with me. He picks me up. We go to Best Buy. He buys me 4 albums, and some of these aren't from the '90s, but he buys me like Late Registration. He buys me College Dropout. He buys me Fugees The Score. And he buys me May's Harlem World. And that's where my appetite kind of started. Because I'm coming from, my first concert I ever went to was a No Strings Attached concert. Straight up. NSYNC was killing it. Killing it. I'm saying that on Hot 97.
That's like when JT had like the blonde,
yeah,
like the bleach look on.
Yeah, it was a thing. It was a thing. I was like 3rd grade, 4th grade. Yeah.
That's awesome. I just, going back to Tribe, the album art for this this project, it reminded me of like Midnight Maraud or like the earlier work. It's all like the strokes and like the color in the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, the painting does have a little similarity.
Comedy, just like comic relief seems to be a theme in your lyrics. Well, like why is that important to you?
That's a good question. I feel like the best artists, to me, have a good sense of humor. Like, you know what I mean? I think if we're talking about Tribe, like R.I.P. Fife, like I thought he had like some funny lines. And I think that like Ye has some...
Early Kanye.
Yeah, has some really funny lines. Like, you know what I mean? And a lot of people that I look up to definitely added a sense of humor to what they're doing to create, like I was talking about, like light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, oh, this may kind of be bad, but let's make fun of it because we're all going through it. You know what I mean?
You dropped 2 singles, Sharpen and Golden, and I think they both have very different messages. Sharpen's the fun, like funny wordplay stuff that we've grown accustomed to from you, and Golden seems to be some sort of relationship that happened to you. Can you kind of explain what the inspiration for each of those songs were and why they're so different?
Yeah, I think Sharpen definitely is a representation of me going outside of myself, and working with Rocky was a great experience and put me on my toes to kind of be more in the moment, and that's why you're hearing more of the, like, you know, flowy and kind of witty stuff. Whereas Golden, I was sitting with it a lot more, and I was writing, and I was in a particular moment in time. I wrote that on tour. Actually, I had just got out of a really bad relationship, and it was like, yeah, I mean, you could hear it. But I just like, yeah, it was like,
I knew it. It
was like, you know what I mean? And it was like definitely inspired by that. It was just like, I had to get some of these feelings out so that I could move on, really. And I felt like even now, listening to it out in the world, like I'm definitely in a completely different space. But it's like I had to let that go, you know?
I know it kind of circles back to the entire idea for the project in general, but I know your mom, she's a psychologist.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So how does psychology kind of factor into like your whole creative process?
Oh, that's interesting. I feel like it factors in ways that I don't think of. Like, I never studied psychology, but I think that my mom, you know what I mean, encouraging me to be like more self-reflective and, like, you know what I mean, pay attention to like people more, and especially in a industry where like we don't do that. We pay attention to like products and, like, you know what I mean, what so and so can do for me, and that creates a spiral of, like, you know, negligence, and I mean that for like one's mental health.
Yeah.
And I feel like she's definitely helped instill in me a great sense of mental fortitude that now I'm comfortable with releasing certain songs, as well as I'm comfortable with myself. And that's where I feel like psychology comes into my music and a lot of music in general, because you have to be confident in yourself in order to put certain things about yourself out there. And we all want to be relatable and we all want to connect, but at the end of the day, that relatability comes from us being, you know, intimate with ourselves.
And authentic.
Yeah,
when
authentic.
You speak.
Yeah, definitely.
Which, again, is a theme. Like, your lyrics are very authentic. So when I heard Golden, I was like, well, this isn't, you know, a fable. It's a real thing that happened to you. So I had to ask.
Definitely.
And I have to ask, just because, just the nerd in me, what are you currently reading?
Oh, God.
Or have you found time to read on tour?
I was reading a little bit of We Were 8 Years in Power by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Also, just because I've been looking at his interviews, like, he's mad dope.
Did you read Between the World and Me?
No, I haven't.
I read it.
That's why I'm going backwards, I feel like, obviously. But, like, this was pretty cool. And just because I got hooked on him from actually that Atlantic article about, like, the first white president, I thought that was, like, that really struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
And, so that's what I've really been focusing on. And then also I'm dabbling in The Artist's Way.
Okay.
That book. I get back and forth with that like every week, pretty much.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You were displaced from New Orleans because of Hurricane Katrina. You moved to Mississippi, right? How did that, was that like an awakening for you? I know you were young when it happened, but just as a creative, because being a creative starts at a young age, like how did that change your scope on the world?
Right. I feel like it changed my scope in a world sense by how let me step back. I think that it changed my worldview in two different ways. One was the fact that as a kid in a southern city, you experience like racism, and you don't know what it means to like the larger sense of the world because of the fact that your bubble is so small. And being outside of New Orleans and like moving to Mississippi and seeing how other people viewed what was going on in New Orleans, you know what I mean? And like a lot of racial tensions were exposed, you know what I mean, during that time. That was one of my first awakenings. Two, and this is also because I'm like 13, so I'm just starting to like go out and stuff. Like I'm not under the real supervision of my parents, you know? And I think that was the first thing. But the second thing was also like, I feel like, as do most kids from Katrina, that like my life started afterwards in terms of like what I remember, like my memory, and like I became awake after and started paying attention to life in a different way because I realized how quickly it could change. You know.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I think that's everything I got.
Hey, what's up? It's your boy Pell here at Hot 97 with Julian. And Hear That Soul comes out 12/8/17. Follow me at Pell on all socials. You can Venmo me, you know what I mean? Anything you want to do. Support a brother hustle. Thank you.